Welcome to Study Session 6, Utilization and Evaluation of Research Findings. Introduction. Policy and professional development has placed increasing pressure on nurses to be more accountable for their actions. At the same time, research into nurse decision-making and research information used by nurses has been increased. There is a growing interest in developing a practice in which there is solid evidence from disciplined research that specific nurses' actions are clinically appreciated and cost-effective and result in positive outcomes for clients. Hence, it is essential for you as a nurse researcher to communicate your findings so that it can be incorporated into nursing protocols, decisions, and curricula to enhance quality nursing care. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Discuss the preparation of a research report. 2. Describe 2 means of presenting research results at professional meetings. 3. Explore the steps in publishing a journal article. 4. Discuss measures to facilitate nursing research utilization. 5. Recognize the barriers of nursing research utilization. 6. Discuss how to bridge the gap between nursing research and practice. 7. Analyze the research utilization model. 8. Explain the guidelines for evaluating implementation of research findings. And 9. Critique a research work. Communicating nursing research findings. Once the researcher has completed a study, plans should be made to communicate or disseminate the results. In fact, these plans should be made before the beginning of the project. A research project is not completed unless the findings have been communicated to others. Winslow, 1996, made a plea for nurses to publish the findings of their studies. She wrote that failure to publish study findings, in her opinion, is a form of scientific misconduct. Patricia Grady, Director of the National Institute of Nursing Research, referred to the old saying that research not published is research not done. Grady 2000. Although the communication of research findings is frequently considered to be the last formal step in research process, it is only the beginning of the most important phase of research, the utilization of research findings. There are two major ways of researchers to communicate the result of their studies. They can talk about them or write about them. A nurse researcher might begin by presenting her study results to peers. Next, the researcher might attend a research conference at which study results are discussed in an oral presentation or a poster session. As a next step, study results might be published in a journal article. Although researchers have the prime responsibility of communicating the findings of their studies, other nurses and nursing organizations also bear the responsibility of saying the research findings are distributed inside the nursing profession to other health professionals and even to the general public. Why communicate research results? The following were the reasons for communicating research findings. 1. Essential to utilization. 2. Allows for other nurses to critique. 3. Stimulate others to replicate or develop similar studies. 4. Provides rewards for the researcher, that is, recognition, advancement, psychological boost, and financial compensation. Preparing a research report. A research report is a written or spoken communication of the findings of a study. The report should be presented in the order of the research process. Research reports may be presented as oral presentations, poster presentations, journal articles, written reports for funding agencies, and in theses and dissertations. A research report is a written or oral summary of a study. No research project or work is complete until the final report has been written. Writing is not easy. Aguirre 2005 has contended that effective writing is not an innate skill skills. She said that this skill, like any skill, must be continually polished. Of course, that takes time. As Schilling 2005 asserted, writing is not our primary job. It is either something we as nurses are required to do if we work in an academic setting, or something we do in addition to our clinical or administrative job. The following should be noted when writing a research report. 1. Effective writing is the result of planning and organization before writing begins. 2. Good writing should be clear, accurate, and concise. 3. Technical or scientific writing is not meant to be humorous or entertaining, but it is also should not be dull. 4. The result of a study should be presented in an interesting and informative manner. 5. The research report should be presented in the order of the research process, beginning with the problem of the study and ending with conclusions, implications, and recommendations for future studies. 5. The major part of the research report should be written in the past tense because the study is already occurred. 6. Hypotheses and conclusions should be written in the present tense. 7. The implications and recommendations should be directed towards the future. Presenting research results at professional conference. Many nurse researchers give first consideration to nursing journals as a publication medium for the research results. However, the time delay for publication of a research work may be 2 years or longer. Presentations of research findings at local, regional, and national conferences promote more rapid distribution of study results. Nurses can present their research results by nursing conference as well as at interdisciplinary conferences. The two ways to disseminate research results at professional conference are oral presentations and poster presentations. Traditionally, oral presentations have been used most frequently, but in the last 15 to 20 years, poster presentations have increased in popularity. Presenting a research paper. The oral presentation of a research report is usually referred to as a paper presentation. The word paper is used because the report of the study has been written out on paper and is referred to or read by investigator during the presentation. If the principal investigator is unable to attend the conference, a co-investigator or another person who is familiar with the study presents the paper. Presenting research results at a conference has advantages over publishing the findings in a journal article. First, the investigator has the opportunity to present findings that are recent. Because of the time lag in publishing, research presented in journals may be outdated when it is printed. Second, the research will have the opportunity to interact with other people who are interested in the study and will be able to locate other researchers who are studying the same or similar phenomena. Although many presentations are read directly from the research paper, more interest is created when an outline is used and the presenter communicates with the audience informally. The use of audiovisual aids such as slides and PowerPoint displays greatly enhances a presentation. Audience usually appreciate written handout in the form of abstract or summaries of the study. A presenter is usually allotted 15 to 30 minutes. At some conferences, additional time is allocated for questions. The format of the oral presentation is similar to that of a journal article or the written presentation of the study. In the steps of research processes are usually presented in chronological order. The main difference lies in the condensation of the material to fit the time constraints of the conference. Some presenters prefer to attract the attention of the audience by reporting the findings first, proceeding with the other part of the study and then returning to discuss the findings in more detail later in the presentation. The review of the lecture is usually not discussed in details and only pertinent studies are mentioned. Presenting a research poster. An increasingly popular way to present research results is through poster presentations. This visual method of presentation may be seen by a large number of people in a short period of time. At a poster session, the presenters usually remain with their posters and interact with the viewers. Posters appeal to those who want to get a general overall view of the remaining research studies being conducted by nurses. Because of time constraints, a research conference participants can only attend a few oral presentations in a 1 or 2 day research conference. However, it is possible to view a fairly large number of posters in just an hour or two. Poster sessions generally are held during research conferences where oral presentations are also given. Usually, 1 or 2 hours of the conference are devoted to posters. Occasionally, education institutions and clinical agencies hold research conferences in which the only method of presentation is through posters. If posters are placed in the hallway in a clinical setting, patients, their visitors, and the nursing staff can view the material at their leisure. Research poster sessions is an excellent way for beginning researchers to get their feet wet, as it were. This type of presentation does not seem as scary as the idea of standing up in front of an audience and discussing a study orally. The size of the posters varies according to different research conferences requirements. Many conferences are held in hotels, and the size of the assigned rooms may dictate the number and size of the posters. A common poster size is 4 feet by 8 feet. If a poster is displayed on a table, some type of support is needed to make the poster stand erect. Posters should contain the research problem statement, hypotheses or research questions, and a description of the sample, the method and the findings and major conclusions. Diagrams, graphs, and tables are effective means of presenting certain aspects of the study, such as the findings. It is better not to place too much material on a poster. Publishing a journal article. The growth of the nursing profession depends on the ability of its members to build and share a body of knowledge. Nursing research is the method of building the knowledge, and publications are the major medium for sharing this knowledge. Research should always be conducted with the idea of publication in mind, which involves the following: preparing the article. Because of space constraints, journal articles provide whatever brief coverage of research report. The length of journal article varies a great deal. The sections of the article and the format vary according to the journal. Most articles contain this part: introduction, review of literature, methods, findings, and discussions. This is important for the researcher to examine the target journal carefully for style and format. Selecting a journal. Selecting an appropriate journal for an article is an important decision. With each passing year, more nursing and allied health journals are coming into existence. The researcher needs to select a journal that corresponds with his or her topic. The choice of a journal may be made before or after a manuscript is prepared. If the manuscript is written first, the author then seeks a journal that is appropriate for the proposal article as written. Another option is to determine the journal most appropriate for the content of the article and then prepare the manuscript according to the guidelines of the particular journal and the needs for that journal's readers. A manuscript that does not meet the needs of the journal's audience will not be accepted for publication in the particular journal. Choosing between referred and non-referred journals. The author must make the choice of publishing in a referred or non-referred journal. Generally speaking, a referred journal is one that subject experts chosen by the journal's editorial staff evaluate manuscript. A non-referred journal uses an editorial staff. Non-referred journals uses editorial staff members or consultants to review manuscripts. The issue of publication is referred versus non-referred journals seems to be almost moot. In both referred and non-referred journals, the journal editor makes the final decision about the publication of an article. The review of manuscripts by professional colleagues who are content or methodological experts is called peer review. According to Smetzer 2005, peer review is the gold standard of scientific publishing. This process allows journal editors to obtain objective opinions about a manuscript from experts in the field. In a blind review, the reviewers are not aware of the author's identity before the manuscript is evaluated. This process is very important to a writer with a limited publication record. An unknown writer would have an equal chance with a well-known author. Some journals are beginning to introduce an open review process. In an editorial in Nursing Research, Molly Doherty 2005, the editor reported that the journal has taken a first step towards open peer. In an open review process, the reviewer signs his or her reviews. Some of these reviews are posted on the web, the journal page. The posted reviews allow the reader to examine the original manuscript and sees the reviewer's comments. If readers provide favorable content about open review, the journal has planned to expand its feature on the journal. Sending query letters. Before submitting an article to a journal, it may be wise for the letter to first determine the journal's interest in the manuscript. This is done through a letter of inquiry called a query letter. A query letter contains an outline of a manuscript and important information about the manuscript that an author sends to an auditor to examine the auditor's interest in publishing the material. The letter should be addressed to the editor by name. It is never wise to address a query letter to the editor of dash or to dear sir or madam. The time should be taken to review a copy of the latest issue of that journal to obtain the name of the auditor. Many journals allow query letters to be submitted via email. Utilization of nursing research findings. The use of research findings in nursing practice is called research utilization. This means going beyond the somewhat artificial research setting to the real world of nursing. In the past, many actions of nurses have been based on tradition or authority. This is no longer acceptable in this day of evidence-based practice. Nurses should be able to justify decisions they make and the care they give. Research utilization refers to the use of some aspect of the study in an application or related to the original research. It has also been referred to as a process directed towards transfer of specific research-based knowledge into practice through the systematic use of a series of activities. When nurses specifically adapted the behavior of the empirical-based recommendation, this is referred to as instrumental utilization, which is direct application of knowledge to change practice. Research can also be used more diffusely in a manner that promotes awareness or enlargement. Kaplan and Rich 1985 in Polite and Unglar 2001 refer to this end of utilization continuum as conceptual utilization. Use of findings to cognitively restructure thinking about a phenomenon. Value of research utilization: to facilitate an innovative change that leads to improved client outcomes, to validate existing nursing knowledge or procedures or interventions, promote critical thinking and reflective practice, enhance professional self-concept, ensures provision of safe and effective care. Practice is based on current, scientifically and knowledge. Self-confidence of the nurse is enhanced. Validates the effort of the researcher. Motivates scholars to continue to discover new knowledge. Reinforces professional accountability. Helps discover new clinical problems for investigation. It promotes cost-effective nursing care and high-quality care. Improve client outcomes. Professionally satisfied and stimulated nursing staff. Enhanced autonomy of nursing practice. Promote positive professional image. Strengthen nursing professional status. Expand the field of nursing scientific knowledge base. Steps of research utilization: select a relevant problem area that requires evidence to bring about change. Review the literature. Determine if the literature findings are appropriate to apply in your setting. Develop a writing research-based protocol and/or procedure to communicate the innovation and ensure consistency in approach and show research based for it. Implementation of the planned innovation. Evaluation of the success of the innovation and dissemination of the findings. Barriers of nursing research utilization: several years elapse between the time results are reported and the time practicing nurses learn about them and attempt to incorporate them into practice. Hence, there are some barriers to research utilization in nursing. There are many barriers to the utilization of nursing research findings in nursing practice. The barriers are: 1. Nurses' lack of knowledge of nursing research. 2. Nurses' negative attitudes towards research. 3. Inadequate members of disseminating nursing research findings. 4. Lack of institutional support for research. And 5. Study findings that are not ready for use in nursing practice. Bridging the gap between research and practice. In the past few years, the nursing literature has shifted some of the emphasis from research utilizations (RU) to evidence-based practice (EBP). Although these terms sometimes are used interchangeably, distinctions can be made between these two concepts. Burns and Group 2005 have described RU, that is research utilization, as the process of synthesizing, disseminating and using research-generated knowledge to make an impact on or a change in the existing practices in society. EBP, evidence-based practice, is viewed as broader in scope than RU. Burns and Grove wrote that EBP ensures the implementation of quality, cost-effective care to promote positive outcomes for patients, providers, and healthcare agencies. EBU comprises not only evidence based on scientific findings but also evidence based on expert clinical opinion and patient and family references. Many nursing research utilization projects have been carried out to reduce the gap between nursing research and nursing practice. Two widely known projects that have fostered research utilization at the Western Council on Higher Education for Nursing (WCHEN) regional program for nursing research development project conducted in the early 1970s, and the Conduct and Utilization of Research in Nursing (CURN) project conducted later that same decade. Which products? In the research utilization aspect of the WCHEN project, nurses from various settings attended 3-day workshops in which they were taught how to use the change process to bring about research utilization. The nurses come in pairs from the same geographical location but worked in different settings. Although the WCHEN project was considered successful, one major problem encountered was the lack of reliable nursing studies that were appropriate for implementation in nursing practice. CURN project. The most well-known nursing research utilization project is the CURN project, a 5-year project sponsored by Michigan Nurses Association. The two major goals of this project were to stimulate the conduct of research in clinical settings and to increase the use of research findings in the daily practice of nurses. The steps to be carried out, according to Osley, Crane, Kirkbride, and Wood, 1983, are as follows. 1. They identify specific clinical nursing practice problems. 2. Assess the existing knowledge based on the issue. 3. Design a nursing practice innovation based on a scientific research base. 4. Implement clinical trials and evaluation of the innovation. 5. Decide to adopt, revise, or reject the innovation. 6. Develop strategies to extend the innovation of other settings. 7. Identify means of continuing the innovation over time. As a result of this project, nursing innovations, that is protocols, were developed for 9 practice problems. These are the titles of the 9 published volumes covering these areas. 1. Mutual goal setting in patient care. 2. Closed urinary drainage system. 3. Distress reduction through sensory preparation. 4. Pain. 5. Intravenous cannula change. 6. Preventing decubitus ulcers. 7. Preoperative sensory preparation to promote recovery. 8. Reducing diarrhea in tube-fed patients. And 9. Structured preparative teaching. Strategies to facilitate research-based practice. 1. Deliberately expose oneself to research literature and findings. 2. Join a journal club. 3. Conference attendance. 4. Support research in setting you find yourself. 5. Educators can role model utilization of research in their teaching and engage students in reflective practice. 6. Provide critiquing assignments and research regular reviews to students. 7. Identify implications of research for practice. 8. Replicate previous studies. 9. Incorporate research findings into text. Research utilization models. A number of models of research utilization have been developed during the past few decades. These models offer guidelines for designing and implementing a utilization project in practice setting. Rogers Innovation Diffusion Model. Rogers Innovation Diffusion Model. Rogers, 1995. Innovation Diffusion Model contains 5 stages: knowledge, persuasion, decision, implementation, and confirmation. The knowledge stage involves the nurse becoming aware of a research-based nursing intervention. This knowledge can be obtained through such sources as conferences, journal articles, and from talks with colleagues. In the persuasion stage, the nurse forms a positive or negative attitude towards the intervention. This attitude can be based on the intervention's advantage, compatibility, complexity, trialability, and observability. After an attitude is formed, the decision stage is reached. In this stage, the nurse decides whether or not to adopt the new intervention. The decision should be based on the research evidence that is being gathered. The implementation phase is research, when the nurse actually puts into practice the intervention or uses the knowledge indirectly, such as by discussing the findings with colleagues or citing the findings at the conference or in one of their own publications. An intervention may be introduced exactly as it was described in research studies, or there might be some adaptation for the popular health care setting where the intervention is being introduced. Finally, in the confirmation stage, the intervention is evaluated for its effectiveness and the decision is whether or not to continue using the intervention. Stilter model of research utilization. The Stilter model of research utilization was first described in 1976. Stilter and Maram, 1976, wrote a classic article about the steps to be taken before the nurse decides what research findings are applicable for nursing practice. The authors contended that numerous guidelines have been proposed to help consumers critique the strength of the research design, but no systematic criteria have been established but help carry the consumer from the critiquing stage to the application stage. Stelzler and Maram listed three phases of critical thinking: validation, comparative evaluation, and decision making. In Stelzler's 2001 revised model, there are six phases of the model: preparation, validation, comparative evaluation, and decision making. In Stelzler's 2001 revised model, there are six phases of model: preparation, validation, comparative evaluation and decision making, translation or application, and evaluation. In the preparation phase, you will specify the underlying purpose and identify a relevant study that would provide insight and direction relevant to that purpose. The validation phase is called research utilization critique. Stetler, 1994, and during this phase, the decision is made to accept or reject a particular study. Validation concerns the overall examination of the strength and weakness of a study. The consumer must question every step of the research process that was carried out. A traditional research critique is done if a biased sample was used, operational definitions were not provided, or invalid statistical procedures were used. The findings would be questionable for application in practice. If the study design and procedures were determined to be valid, most consumers also should search for findings and conclusions that might be valid in their clinical settings. If the study design and procedures were determined to be valid, most consumers also should search for findings and conclusions that might be valid in their clinical settings. If the nurse determines that the study is valid, then a comparative evaluation should be done. What variables would affect the decision to change practice based on research findings? Would it be possible to implement these findings in the nurse practice? The nurse would want to know how similar the research setting was to her or his own setting, and how similar the study sample was to patients or clients with whom the nurse works. Finally, in doing a comparative evaluation, the nurse must determine the feasibility of implementation and findings based on the constraints of the particular practice setting. Are there any legal or ethical risks to the involved clients, nurses, or the institution? Would applying the findings involve a general organization change? are the resources available, that is, time, money, and equipment. Once the nurse has examined the feasibility, the decision about application is made. The nurse may decide against application or make a cumulative or a direct application of the findings. Translation and application. Cognitive application means that the nurse is not yet ready to apply the findings in practice, but will use the information to enhance her or his knowledge base and may consider moving to a direct application in the future. Direct application of research findings means that the nurse chooses to test out the findings in practice. Evaluation. Application does not mean that the nurse will not continue to check the validity of the findings. It means that this validity check will now be done directly under cognitively. Guidelines for evaluating implementation of research findings. It is essential to determine to what extent to which the nurse researcher have addressed the problem, and the knowledge base must be critically evaluated, and this can also be done through the evaluation of the implementation of the research findings, and it involves the following steps. 1. Utility to practice. 2. Applicability to practice. 3. Replication. 4. Scientific merit. 5. Client safety. And 6. Feasibility. Research critiquing. Nurses are personally accountable for their practice and answering for their actions and omissions, regardless of advice or directions. Research critiquing. Nurses are personally accountable for their practice and answerable for their actions and omissions, regardless of ideas or directions from another professional. The importance of understanding, critically analyzing, and applying research becomes vital when so much rests on professional ability and accountability. A research critique is an analysis of a research undertaking that focuses on its strengths and limitations. Critiquing is a systematic process for evaluating research studies and results reported. Burns and Groves, 2001, indicated that in the 1940s and 1950s, nursing research generated critiques that were less than pleasant, and Polity and Beck, 2006, indicated that a research critique is a mechanism to provide feedback for implementation. They further suggested that nurses who can critically review a study contribute to the study of nursing knowledge. Finally, considering a rationale for a research critique can be found in the definition of the word critique as offered by Webster's, editors of Webster's Two College Dictionaries, 1999. Critique is a critical review or commentary, especially one dealing with a literary or artistic work. Importance of critiquing research work. The essence of the successful critiquing of a research paper lies in achieving a balanced appraisal. The reader needs to look for the merits and demerits of the methods used as well as the applicability to the healthcare setting. A balanced appraisal also requires a degree of logical and objectivity in identifying the systematic cause of inquiry which underpins the research. The ultimate aim of any critique undertaken by nurses is to consider the applicability to practice. The purpose of a research critique is to determine whether the findings are usable for you. Decisively critiquing quantitative research evidence. Quantitative research reports tend to be slightly easier to critique because of the concreteness of the quantitative research design. The different aspects of the quantitative research document and expectations for all of the various elements such as the introduction, literature review, hypothesis, sampling, research design, statistical testing, and discussion. Although each of these areas has considerable levels and components, the clarity of the descriptions of this aspect is more distinct than a qualitative methodologies. According to Keita 2006, the critiquing of quantitative research report should address four basic areas: A. Comprehension, B. Comparison, C. Analysis, and D. Evaluation. Each of these four levels of reviews adds a different dimension to the resulting scrutiny. Comprehension and comparison provide the overall appraisal of the report. Analysis then takes the investigation of the report to the level of reflecting on the continuity among the different parts. At this point of assessing the report, the principal concern is whether the hypothesis flows into the sample, which is appropriately managed by the research design. The final aspect carefully considers the meaning and significance of the study process for implementation into nursing practice. The focus of this aspect is to determine whether the findings, implementations, and recommendations are truly supported and presented. A principal aspect that is unique to the quantitative research appraisal is the use of a conceptual or theoretical framework by Jazz 2005. Although it can be provided in any of the research methodologies, this framework is essential in all quantitative research endeavors. Decisively critiquing quantitative research evidence. In evaluating qualitative research endeavors, the examination of the entire process takes on a slightly different focus from that of a quantitative research endeavor. Assessment of the clarity of the purpose and statement of the phenomenon remains consistent with that of any other methodology critique. This component must be presented upfront. From that point on, the specificity of the qualitative design must be considered. Broad research questions instead of hypotheses are frequently employed within this type of research design. The literature review may follow the data collection aspect rather than diving the research endeavor. A framework may or may not be clearly presented. Qualitative research reviews must carefully discuss the researcher-participant relationship because this aspect is critical to the collection of data. Ethical considerations are also significant within this methodology. Keita 2006 presented 5 standards to keep in mind when conducting a qualitative research critique, which are: the research report must present a comprehensible description of the research environment, data collection process, sampling process, and the researcher's thought process. A second standard relates to the importance of congruence among the methodological aspects. According to Keita 2006, this section should indicate rigor in documentation, procedural rigor, ethical rigor, and auditability. The third standard is the analytical preciseness. With regard to this aspect, the researcher's thoughts and decisions related to the data should be evident in the report. This fourth standard stresses the importance of addressing the theoretical connectedness presented within the report. The fifth and final standard from Keita 2006 suggests that the relevance, that is, value of the study, needs to be apparent within the documentation of the research project. Appropriate examination of each of these facets within a research report presents a strong, valid description of the research project. The data collection aspect is a crucial component of the presentation of qualitative research projects. The reader must be walked through the entire process from identification of the participant to the management of the data. The congruence of the data collected with the research purpose, question, and tradition needs to be assessed. The researcher is obliged to discuss how the field engagement and observations ought to build trust and ensure validity of the data collected. Another aspect that should be identifiable within the report is the ongoing and concurrent nature of data collection and analysis. Study session summary. In this study session, we discuss that research is the globally accepted driving force for sustainable development and progress in any discipline. For nursing profession to attain to its optimum high and professionalism, there is need for increase in the number of research done. In order to foster this, the nurse researcher must know how to write for a research proposal grant, which will enhance a high-quality research. A research project is not completed until the findings have been communicated to others. Winslow, 1996, made a plea for nurses to establish the findings of their studies. She wrote that failure to publish study findings, in her opinion, is a form of scientific misconduct. This is the end of study session 6. Thank you.